Please pray with me. Loving God, take our lips and speak through them. Take our minds and think through them. Give us your vision. Set our hearts on fire. Let us be reborn in you so that we may better serve one another. Amen. Good morning. It is always such a pleasure to be back here, such an honor. Did any of you get to General Synod? Some say synod, some say synod. Steve, any others? I had the pleasure of going, and I will talk about it in my sermon this morning, one of the things I did, but it seems since I've gotten back that I've heard people really talking about a couple of things, talking about the difference of what is spiritual versus religious, and also what's the best way to worship God. Our ancient prophet Amos today, the common shepherd, was pretty certain that the way we treat each other is our divine worship. Like the Gospel's Good Samaritan, Amos believed in hospitality, and this church has been offering up loads of that with the Homeless Overflow project that you've been doing. I hope you've experienced some fun and precious hospitality, welcoming guests, hanging out together. I hope you've heard some stories, shared some smiles, some twinkling eyes. That kind of hospitality refreshes us. But Amos, again like the Good Samaritan, pushes for more. Both of them extend hospitality outside of the temple. I hate to admit it, but outside the safe boundaries of church or my own home turf, I'm often a lot more like the priest and the Levite in the Good Samaritan story. The ones that walk by on the other side of the road, pretending not to see the stranger in need. I get worried about my safety, and my fears can get the better of me. Amos wouldn't appreciate my justifications. He'd tell me I'm lost because I'm part of a privileged class of people that can avoid seeing and hearing neighbors in need. In turn, he'd say I often don't see or hear God either. I'd be embarrassed for you or Amos to see how many pairs of shoes are piled in my closet. It's not that I'm some kind of stylish fashionista. It's just hard to find comfortable shoes to go with all my various outfits. The feisty prophet Amos is speaking to people like me. He's confrontational and highly critical of excess and political establishments that buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. Whoa, Amos, lay off of my blue suede shoes. What's your problem? Why so critical? Amos condemns dishonest shopkeepers and excessive luxuries. I'm not in league with Imelda Marcos, and Paul Simon will never sing about me being a rich girl with diamonds on the soles of my shoes. But I doubt Amos would understand my multiple shoe needs. Amos sees God, Yahweh, as the God of all people, not just Israel. He warns that God will withdraw because the people have broken covenant. God has provided everything, the earth and all the abundance it brings forth. Yet rather than returning first fruits out of gratitude, the people have become greedy, wanting more for themselves, withholding from others. Amos has a vision. Actually, this is his fourth vision, but this one is about summer fruit. Not the spring kind of berries that we see, but the end of the season harvests. The word is chaos. It represents the end and the end of the covenant. God will be lost to the people. Because they have let go of their covenant with God, they will search but not find. The earth will quake, making mountains tremble, and the people will mourn, but they won't get it. To Amos, worship of God, can you guess, where do we do our worship? Anybody? To Amos, we do our worship in the marketplace, not in the temple. He proclaims that people gathering wealth at others' expense will wander and not find God. At General Synod, I participated in a one-day border immersion experience sponsored by the UCC's El Centro Romero in San Ysidro. Has anybody done this before? It's a great experience. A bunch of us boarded 2 buses at Long Beach, and we ate breakfast on the U.S. side of the border, got acquainted with some of the history of the area. And you probably know California was northern Mexico. San Luis Obispo, one of California's oldest cities, was founded by Junipero Serra, taking its Spanish name from St. Louis, the Bishop of Toulouse. Even after this part of Mexico became the United States, people traveled back and forth, and for many years would visit relatives, come and go, would come here to work, go back home. Our border today looks very different. First of all, on the U.S. side, there are outlets, many, many outlets. And then there are fences, not just one, multiple fences. Some that have been started and discontinued because they were illegally being built by undocumented workers. There are even electric fences. And there are crosses for thousands who've died trying to get across the border. There's extreme militarization, searchlights, warnings, and guns. Right on the border, there's a large distribution building with a fenced road that allows Mexicans to drive up and deliver products made for American consumers. Just across the border, there's about 4,000 homeless people who are dumped off, living within underpasses, a dangerous zone of crime and desperation. Further into Mexico, we drove past factories, lots of them, called maquiladoras, an American Spanish word meaning the place where the miller gets his cut, based on an Arabic word, maquila, or measured. Fair measures in the marketplace were Amos's great concern. The maquiladoras are multinational, but 80% are U.S. There's one after another, with few windows and no markings for you to know what's being made inside. Next, our group drove to the area where the factory workers' homes are, where they live. And this slide that I have is a picture I took, but these were actually some of the nicer places, the places that were really rough. There was a canal blocking the view, so you couldn't see them, but they have no running water, no sewer, no electricity, no services. Most are just like one-room shacks made from scraps of metal or wood, whatever. We got off our bus and stood looking at row upon row of third-world slum-like living conditions. Carlos Correa from El Centro Romero informed us that the factories generally hire women for $56 a week. Men are their supervisors. They clock in by attaching a Velcro strip to their wrists that's attached to the machine. If they need to use the restroom, they must remove the Velcro bracelet. And they're not paid for the time they're away, so some women even wear Depends diapers to keep from leaving their stations and losing pay. Women are terminated before they reach the age of 35. Each must submit to a monthly pregnancy test that they have to pay for themselves. If they become pregnant, they're terminated. Women who have become pregnant, some have given birth to children with birth defects due to chemicals used in some of the factories. As we looked out over the homes, we could smell stench from the polluted factory runoff that travels through a canal nearby. We watched little kids crossing on homemade bridges. This is their home. Many are left home alone while their mothers work. We hung out there a long time, hot, dusty, miserable. Some families look for a ticket out, a treacherous trip across the border. Others are offered $15,000 to $20,000 for their virgin daughters. Thirsty people drink muddy water. Where is God? Where is our worship? We boarded our bus and drove by the street of young girl sex workers. Where is God? Who's my neighbor and who's buying the poor for silver? It made me think of a poem I was given by a missionary who lives in Thailand. His name is Salvador Martinez, who also has written this poem from the girls he's worked with who are sold by their families. I'd like to share it with you. Her mother sold her to a kind recruiter who promised she'll become a hairdresser. She ends up at a brothel, a sex worker. She refused, but no one listened to her objection. Instead, she was battered into submission and threatened. More protests and she'd be bludgeoned. A migrant, stranger in a foreign land. Nobody cares, except when she's in demand, to fulfill what her ruthless boss will command. There's no one to help her, to come to her rescue. Customers she serves, young and old and new. When alone, she sits in a room without a view. She's hungry. Each day she eats only a bowl of rice. She's sick by men who refuse to wear a condom. She is homesick and longs for real love and for freedom. Is there hope for her and for countless others, innocent children sold to heartless slavers, redemption so remote, suffering forever? It's karma, they tell her, due to past deeds. Such nonsense. This is human cruelty and greed. No, never what the Almighty decreed. Oh, where's God? On her knees she asks, day and night, begging God to liberate her and others with God's might, the children and women who dwell in the night. In Mexico, as our bus climbed up the hill, I tried not to see the girls on the other side of the street, the young ones nearly naked, their very bodies robbed and sold. We drove to the beach where the fence extends into the ocean, separating a crowd of Mexican beach enthusiasts from a long stretch of deserted sand on the U.S. side. Toxic runoff makes this lengthy stretch of beach too hazardous for U.S. citizens to visit. It was here that our group participated in a holy meal of communion, praying together that we may all be one. We drove back to the border, and immediately after passing through customs, safely back on U.S. soil, I heard a helicopter overhead. I looked up, and all I could think about was the extreme militarization and the extreme amount of money keeping everything in place, as it is and as it has been for years. How could I just walk away, leaving my desperate neighbors on the other side of that wall? Where is God? Is it possible to be a good Samaritan American, to love God and our neighbors as ourselves, show mercy, hospitality, on the other side of the street, on the other side of the border? There have been many political debates, especially recently, debates over amnesty, fences. These things matter, but I see them as political red herrings. They don't solve the root problem. They exist as extremes and prevent us from asking, what's my part in this? I don't contribute to sex trafficking, do I? Are children living with birth defects in order for me to have cheap goods? Do my shoes matter? Who's selling the needy for a pair of sandals? Making high-quality handcrafted leather shoes has been a staple industry around León, Mexico for many years. It employs about 70% of the region's population. These businesses can't compete with cheap Chinese sweatshop labor. Amos was the prophet, concerned about profits, not idolatry. Yet I believe he would say that economic indicators have become our God, what we place our faith in, our ultimate concern. Our corporations exist quite legally to generate callous profits for investors. Rich can get richer and poor poorer depending on trade practices. We are buying the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of discount sandals. Contrary to our religion of faith in the economy, economic indicators do not best predict peace and societal well-being. Psychological well-being scores predict that much better. Amos provides a prophetic conscience to our nation. Mindless shoe purchases matter. Cheap shoes from China put reputable industries out of business, while we tolerate unjust measures at our U.S. maquiladoras. We will need more walls and our eyes closed tighter to keep from seeing our neighbors on the other side of the street. I think to be a good American, I have to open my eyes to see how my consumer habits affect people. I believe Amos and the Good Samaritan would tell me, don't leave things as they are. Don't let any religion, personal, economic, or political, keep you from getting close and feeling the Spirit. Fair trade is one of the things we can do. It's a powerful way for us to say no to injustice and yes to paying living wages. I love this little book called The Better World Shopping Guide. It's just one tool, but it's very user-friendly. I can go in here and look up anything, shoes, cookies, beer, you name it, and it will give a grade to different companies from A to F about how well companies take care of the people they employ, how they affect the earth. And it also tells you the top 10 that you maybe should never deal with. There's also the UCC that has a Justice and Witness Ministry Advocacy Handbook for people who would like to get involved. Mother Teresa reminds us we do no big, great things, just small things, all of us together with great love. But imagine what a group of us crazy, wannabe, good Samaritan Americans will do by putting our small efforts together, speaking about our dreams and passions, things we just don't want to close our eyes to any longer. Let's envision that. Let us hear roaring Amos and feel our earth shaken. Our God of radical abundance will surely delight in recovenanting with us once again. Amen.